Hello, second grade leaders. Today we're going to be going over lesson 12-2, measuring with inches. And our I can statement reads, I can estimate measures and use a ruler to measure the length and height to the nearest inch. So what are we working on today? We're working on measuring in inches. Why? Because this is a life skill you'll use in a variety of ways. And how will you know you've understood it? We're looking to get 80% or higher on our quick check. Our solve and share today asks or states, the orange square is 1 inch long. How can you use 1 inch squares to find the length of the line in inches? Measure the line and explain. So I don't have my square tiles with me, so I'm going to show you two other things that you can use at home if you also don't have square tiles. The first thing you could use to estimate is a paper clip. I'm going to line that up to the orange square. You can see it's a little bit longer than the orange square, but it's pretty close, and we'll work to make an estimate. The other thing that we can use, and that I'm going to use today on this, is the tip of our thumbs. So from the tip of our thumb to just that first knuckle, you can see that that's about an inch. So I'm going to lay my thumb down, and the way that I'm going to do it is just try to line my knuckle up there and make a little mark right here on my line. There's one. I'm gonna line it up again. There's 2, one more time, 3, another time, 4, another time, 5, and we can see that 6 makes that last line. So I have 6 sections now, or I can say this line is about 6 inches long. On to our guided practice. Our guided practice today starts with our friend up here, and he says, you can measure the length and height of an object in inches. He reminds us that when we start to measure, we need to start at the 0 mark on the ruler. You'll notice that on some rulers, that 0 mark is right at the edge, and on others, it's a little bit in. So it's really important to make sure that you look at your ruler before you start to measure. So we want to start at that 0 mark. Then it says to measure to the nearest inch, you look for the halfway mark. So looking at this ruler here, you can see here's 0, and it's this longer line that comes down. And then in the middle, there's another line that comes about halfway through. It's a little bit longer than the rest. That's the halfway mark. It's halfway between the 0 and the 1. That mark is going to be between every big number on a ruler. So you can see here they've marked it. Here's the 1. This halfway mark comes down a little bit farther than the rest. And then here's the 2. We don't want to get it confused with our quarter marks, which are here, and they're a little bit longer, but this one we're looking for that right there in the middle, that halfway point. So looking at this eraser, they did the right thing. They lined it up with the 0. They measure across, and you can see that here's the halfway mark, and I can see that this eraser doesn't quite make it to the 2, but it is farther than the halfway mark. So let's read how we should measure this. It says, if the object is longer than the halfway mark, use the greater number. So our friend here tells us that this eraser is about 2 inches long. That about word is very important. It lets them know that we're making an estimation. This this eraser isn't 2 inches long exactly, but it's pretty close. It's about 2 inches long. I'm going to round up to this bigger number because my eraser passes this halfway mark. But let's look at this example up here. It says, if the object is shorter than the halfway mark, use the smaller number. So they have a pine cone. They lined it up with the 0, perfect, just like we should. And we see that it passes the 1 inch mark, but it doesn't quite make it to this halfway line. Here's where the halfway line would come up, and my pine cone isn't quite there yet. So I'm going to round down, and just like our friend says here, the pine cone is about 1 inch long. Again, that about is pretty important. So now this one we want to do our do you understand? Use a ruler to measure what classroom objects are about 12 inches long. So I went around my house and I found some things that I thought you might be familiar with. The first one is our blue homework folders. I know we all have these somewhere. We haven't used them in a little while, but I'm going to look at this and I can lay my ruler here. Notice I'm going to start at this 0 line. and it's just a little bit in, so I'm gonna carefully line that up there. And I'm gonna see that it comes, here's where the 11 is. Here's my halfway line, and I can see it's actually kind of right at that halfway line. And so if it's right at that line or just past it, we would round up to being 12 inches. So I can say the length, or the height, I guess, if we put it this way, the height of this folder, you just can't see it that way, is about 12 inches long. So I'm gonna write down our homework folders are about 12 inches long. You can check if you have a ruler at home or if you've printed out the one from online. So I'm gonna say that the homework folder is about 12 inches long. Let's see what else might be about 12 inches. Here's a book we've been reading, Salt in His Shoes. And again, I'm gonna measure the height of the book, how tall it is, but I'm gonna turn it to the side so you guys can see. So I'm looking at this, and I can see that when I line up my 0 right here at the edge, and I go down my ruler, that is almost spot on to the 12. It's just shy of it, but it's certainly past the halfway mark, and it's close, so it's closer to the 12 than it is to the 11. So I can say that this book is about 12 inches long. Again, that about means that I'm estimating. So I'm gonna say the Salt in His Shoes book. So I have one object, two objects that are about 12 inches long. On to the guided practice part here. It says, estimate the height or length of each object, then use a ruler to measure. So the height of a notepad, now it wants you to get a real object here. So again, oops, I had to go on a little adventure around my house. I found a notebook. The height would be going this way with it, but you can't see that on the screen. So I'm gonna turn it here, and we're gonna measure the height from the top to the bottom. And so I'm gonna look at it, and I'm gonna think to myself, okay, I remember that an inch is about the tip of my finger. So if I lay that down here, I can say there's 1, maybe put a little line, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm gonna say it's about 10 inches. So I'm gonna write, and they gave us an example where they said about 12 inches, and that's fine. We can either copy that, but since I used my finger, I'm gonna change that. I'm gonna write over it and make it 10. And now I'm going to measure this. So when I line it up here, again, I have to be careful to make sure that the edge of my folder, notebook in this case, is lined right up to that first line, that 0 line right there. And I'm gonna go up all the way across, and I'm gonna see that it ends right before the 12, but it's certainly past this halfway line. So I'm gonna round up and say that after using a ruler, when I measured it, that it's about 12 inches long. So I was a little bit off in my estimation, and that's okay. It is okay to be a little bit off in your estimation. Now I'm gonna do the pencil case. So I have a pink pencil case here, and it actually has glue sticks in it, but it's still a pencil case. And I wanna measure the length of the pencil case right here. So again, I'm gonna use my thumb to make an estimate. So I'm gonna say there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm gonna say it's about 7 inches long. That's my estimate using my fingertip, as close to being accurate as I can. Now I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna measure it with my ruler. So again, I'm gonna line it up at the 0 mark, and it has to hang over just a little bit because it actually, the top is kind of curved on this one. So I'm gonna line it up here with my 0, and I'm gonna go across. You guys see that? Sorry. Line it up like that, and I'm gonna go across. I'm gonna see that the edge actually ends just past that halfway mark on the 7. So instead of being 7 inches, I'm gonna round up to that 8 mark, and I'm gonna say that it's about 8 inches. I was pretty close. I used my thumb and got about 7 inches. I used my ruler and measured it and said it was about 8 inches after I rounded up. So that, my friends, is how you can estimate and then measure. Let's go on to our independent practice. Now, I'm assuming that many of you have a backpack at home, so I'm going to let you measure your backpack first by estimating the length of it using your finger or a paper clip. Don't forget that you can use that as well. And I'm assuming most of you have a cup at home. So again, I'm going to let you do this exercise with a cup on your own. I'm going to grab a paintbrush, though, and do this. So again, I'm going to line it up here, and I'm going to measure it, and this time I'm going to use the paper clip. So I'm going to line it up. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I need another one, so I'm going to borrow this one for a second. 5, 6. I'm going to say that it's about 6 inches long. My paintbrush is about 6 inches long. Now I'm going to measure it using the ruler. So again, remember when we measure with the ruler, we want to line it up with that 0 line right here at the edge. And we want it to go across, and we're going to look to see where it ends. Ooh, this one's almost spot on, just shy of that 8-inch mark. So when I line it up and measure it that way, I actually see that it's about 8 inches long. So again, close. I wasn't totally accurate with my estimate, but that's okay. I was using something that's about 1 inch, and then I was checking it using the ruler. So now we're going to do the length of a crayon box. And their crayon box looked a little bit longer than mine, but here's my crayon box. And I'm going to estimate using my thumb again. So I'm going to say 1, 2, 3. I'm going to say that this one is about 3 inches wide or long that way. And now I'm going to line my ruler up. Again, I'm going to line it up at that 0 mark. It's very important to do that. And I'm going to go across, and I'm going to see that it is just shy. It's sliding on there, just shy of the 3. So again, I'm going to round up to that 3-inch mark because it is past that halfway point. And remember, if it goes past the halfway mark, that we round up to the bigger measurement. And so I'm going to say that this crayon box is about 3 inches. Look at that. I finally got an estimate that was pretty spot on. Now it says higher order thinking. Think about how to use a ruler to solve each problem. I'm going to do 7 and leave 8 for you to do. So it says, Jason measures an object. The object is just shorter than the halfway mark. Ooh, that's important. Between 8 and 9 on his inch ruler. How long is the object? Okay, let's go back to what our friend said here in our guided practice page. Remember that if the object is shorter than the halfway mark, there we go, sorry, we use the smaller number. Ooh, that was a good reminder. So looking at this, if it tells me that it's shorter than the halfway mark, between 8 and 9, my friend on our guided practice told me that then that means I have to use the shorter, or excuse me, the smaller number. So I'm going to say that it must be about 8 inches because it's less than the halfway mark. Number 8 is asking us, saying that Gina measures, excuse me, an object. That object is just longer than the halfway mark between 9 and 10. So the measurement falls between 9 and 10, but it's longer than the halfway mark. So here's my 9, here's my 10. They're telling me that the measurement falls somewhere in this section. So I want you to be thinking about, would you round up to the bigger number 10 if it's past the halfway mark or longer than the halfway mark? Or would you round down to the 9? Think about that, and you can answer it. All right, number 9 says, Pam says that each cherry is about 1 inch wide. Is she correct? So I'm going to go ahead and measure this one using my ruler, and I'm going to see that it's not quite to the 1, but I know that when I'm estimating or using that about, that as long as it's past that halfway part, I round up to the bigger number. So I can see here's my 0, and it's lined right up there. Here's the halfway mark, and it certainly goes past that. It doesn't make it to the 1, but it's past that halfway mark. So I'm going to say that yes, Pam is correct. Oops. Because the cherry is longer than the halfway mark. That's how I'm going to explain my thinking on that one. I'm going to agree with Pam because she says it's about an inch, and I'm going to agree because when I measured it, it wasn't quite at the 1, but it was certainly past that halfway mark. And I know that if we pass that halfway mark, then I'm going to round up to the bigger number. I'm going to let you do number 10 on your own, but it says find an object in the classroom, and obviously you're going to find one in your home instead, that measures about 6 inches. Write a sentence to describe the object. So again, you can use something at your table, you can use something in your kitchen, and you can use your thumb to measure it or a paper clip, and you're going to find something that's about 6 inches and then write a sentence about it. For number 11, it says explain how to use an inch ruler to measure the length of an object. This one's really important, and I want to make sure that we all understand how to measure. So I'm going to help you out with this one. I'm going to start with our first step, which is to place the edge of the object on the 0 mark. So I'm going to say place the edge of the object on the 0 mark. That's where we start. Remember that when we go to measure something, we've got to make sure that we line it up with that 0 mark right here at the edge. Then the length of the object is where the other end of the object is on the ruler. Is where the other end of the object is on the ruler. And then I'm going to say use the halfway mark to decide. And what I mean by that is if my object is short of the halfway mark, I'm going to round down to that smaller number. If it's past the that halfway mark, I'm going to round up to the bigger number. And then the assessment, what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to lay my ruler on it. I want you to look at it. In case you don't have a ruler at home, you can use this video to make to decide how long it is. So here I am. I'm going to make sure that I do it correct for you. I'm going to line it up at the 0 mark, and we're going to see, the question I should say says, about how many inches long are 2 stamps together? So I'm going to line this up here, and I'm going to let you look at that for a second. Look to see where the edge of this stamp comes down. And I want you guys to decide about how long are these 2 stamps together if I'm looking at that ruler. When you know, you can go ahead and circle in your answer or write it down on your piece of paper. And my friends, you can practice the questions I left open today, and then don't forget to log on to Pearson and take your quick check. Happy math, friends.